So the DCU is known for one thing and one thing alone. They're villains. Alright, that's not necessarily true, but there are some interesting ones and really creative ones, so today I thought it'd be fun to do a tier list of the DCEU villain. The tiers I have today are good, pretty self-explanatory, meh, not really interesting, but not really bad ones either, bad, what were you thinking, and Steppenwolf. Now, there's no great or amazing or god tier on this list, because even the really high DCU villains I just think are okay. They're not terrible, they're not awful, they're just pretty interesting, and the worst ones are kind of lower tier. And two things to know up front. Number one, if you want to make your own tier list, I'll leave a link down in the description to the tier list template I use down in the description box below. And secondly, spoiler alert for the entire DCU films. You've been warned. Alright, let's get into it. So first one up, I have Enchantress. Starting off things pretty strong. I'm gonna put her in the bad category. Like, I'm not gonna say she's awful. I'm not gonna put her in the what we thinking or Steppenwolf category. But she's just really strange. I would say this shot's pretty cool, but she's just very generic. She makes generic mud people. She makes a generic skybeam, and the performance by Cara Delevingne isn't really that interesting or really engaging. And the villain of this film just doesn't really work and fit the Suicide Squad, even though she's just strange and doesn't really have much to say. Next up, I have another Suicide Squad villain. I have Jared Leto's Joker. I'm going to put this in the what were you thinking category, because this is just such an odd, out there performance in not the best ways. Sometimes you can have an odd, really strange performance, and it's just really strange and weird and just wacky and goofy, but this performance isn't that. I remember when the set photos came out, people were interested in Jared Leto's performance as the Joker. They weren't really liking it, but at least they had some interest and some motivation to be like, this could be pretty interesting. But when the film came out and this weird, over-the-top, awkward performance, and not the best way either it came out, people were just being like, wow, this is just a weird performance. And that's the best way to describe it. It's just strange. Maybe the performance would have been better if they didn't cut every single sequence of Jared Leto to shreds. Maybe it would have been better, but it's just so strange. In background stories and the backstories of Jared Leto sitting as cast members' condoms and bullets and rats, maybe that doesn't help this performance either. It's just extremely weird. The editing of every time he's on screen is just strange. All these weird colors and highlights just make it trying to be. It sounded like the director just kind of said, add crazy, and didn't really give him much direction besides just add crazy. This is one of the most weirdest performances, and I think it'll go out in history as not a good performance, but a really bad one. Next up, we have Ocean Master from Aquaman. I'm going to put him in the good camp. He's a really fun, interesting character, and that's kind of the thing about Aquaman. Aquaman's a really dumb, over-the-top, silly comic book film, and because of the silly comic book nature of that film, he can really chew up the scenery in all the best ways, because it doesn't feel awkward or weird, because it just blends in with a style that I think Aquaman was made for. And the performance is really fun. The suit is pretty accurate for a comic book perspective, and even him saying the name Ocean Master could have sounded really weird and cringy in live action, but because of the nature of this film, it doesn't. He's not the most highly developed character, and sometimes he's not really that captivating. I didn't really find him that threatening, but still a really awesome villain. Next up, we have Ares from Wonder Woman. I'm gonna put him in the bad tier. I do really enjoy this villain, and the performance is not that bad, but it is how over the top and silly he is, and not the best ways, doesn't really work. It's not even like an Aquaman situation, because that film is ridiculous and comic booky. Anyway, the Wonder Woman film is silly and comic booky in a certain descent, but it's almost more seriously and kind of down to earth as much as a Wonder Woman film can be. So just the final fight is just big overall CGI globs of smoke and some pretty generic villain dialogue. Just doesn't make this villain that interesting or even captivating. And overall, this villain is just bad. Even the finale of Wonder Woman, I feel it's really confused thematically, because it's trying to. I thought it was really interesting when they're like, okay, it doesn't matter if you're just fighting a big giant bad guy, everyone in the world can be bad. That's interesting, captivating, and could be really engaging. But this film just decides, nah, let's do that, but let's just throw it off the door for the final fight, and you have to fight one big bad guy to end up. And I'm just like, it's not interesting, it's not weird, it's just strange at a lot of points. It's overall just a villain that I don't really find that interesting. Next up, we have another Aquaman villain, Manta. I'm definitely going to put him in the good camp. I think he's really fun. Yes, the performance isn't really that incredible, and yes, sometimes it's so over the top. And yes, the villain doesn't get a lot of develop, but the suit's pretty awesome, comic accurate, and he's just a fun little villain for the characters to fight along the way, which I found really interesting and captivating. And yeah, he has some fun action sequences, and I cannot wait to see him in the later DCEU films, and hopefully the sequel going forward. Next up, we have Doomsday. I'm gonna put him in the bad category. He's close to the what we thinking category, but yeah, I definitely know what they were thinking. They wanted a big major villain to fight at the end, because if I Lex Luthor, it would have been over in seconds. But he's just super ugly, and not like an he's terrifying way, just in a really bad way. He's not captivating, he's not engaging, and I guess it fits the Snyder world, but the film is really ugly to begin with, and to be honest, he's not that interesting. How amazing the Batman v Superman Doomsday villain is. This could have been an exciting, excessive final battle. But the thing is, he's just kind of crammed in the last second. And I guess that's not really a problem to this villain, and just the problem with the Batman v Superman's pacing in general. But yeah, he's definitely going in the bag. Next up, I have Enchantress's brother CGI guy. I'm going to put this in what we're thinking. The CGI is actually terrible. One of the worst CGI designs in a comic book film I've seen in the last decade. He's not interesting, and I guess he's supposed to be kind of like a Black Manta situation where they want the Suicide Squad to fight him, but they don't really fight him until the final finale. So he just ends up being a big comic book character for them to fight at the end, which just doesn't really work. He's not an interesting character, and there's not really much to say. Next up, I have General Ludendorff from Wonder Woman. I'm going to put him in the mad category. He's not terrible, he's not bad, he's just strange. The performance is very stiff and dim, and if you really look at World War I and look at Ludendorff in real life, it's not really interesting or really accurate. But the thing is, that's not why I hate this villain so much. He's just bland and boring. That's kind of the main problem. Even a bad villain, like, I guess, Jared Leto's, or a really good villain, in this case, like Black Manta, at least they're either good or bad. This is just bland and generic. Next up, we have General Zod from Man of Steel. Another just meh villain. Not terrible. I think the acting and performances at times is really good, even though sometimes the acting is not very bad. And I like how he's a physical match for Superman, even though sometimes that doesn't work. But sometimes it's really cool and interesting. I'm not going to say he's the best villain ever made. He's really over the top and stupid in some really bad ways. And I'm not going to say the performance all the time is really that engaging or captivating. But I would say overall the performance is fine with a lot of interesting bad moments. Next up, we have another controversial pick, Jesse Eisenberg. Now, I could put him in What Were You Thinking, but I'm going to put him in the bad, because I don't hate this performance. Actually, it's not bad, it's not great, it's not terrible, it's just, I think I have to put him in the bad category, because it's stupid, and on a thematical level, if Jesse Eisenberg playing Lex Luthor, which that's how we're judging, it's bad, but as a performance, I couldn't say I wasn't entertained. It is a very entertaining performance, with him kind of shouting and screaming and doing really weird things, and this film is trying to be super serious and grounded, but with this over-the-top Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor performance, it just doesn't really work at all. Overall, this is not a terrible performance, it's just a really bad performance. Next up, I have The Creatures from Shazam. I'm going to put it in the meh. It's the top meh, and it's probably the most interesting meh. I wasn't crazy about a lot of these things. These things are very Scooby-Doo and very Scooby-Doo-like, and I know Shazam is supposed to be very cartoony as it is, but I think this is too cartoony. It's too silly and over the top in a lot of aspects that just doesn't work, and I wasn't crazy about a lot of them. The design isn't that bad, but I have a whole Shazam video talking about them in depth. Next up, I have Dr. Sivana from Shazam. I'm going to put him in the good camp. Again, I have an entire video talking about Shazam that I recently just did, so it's an in-depth video, so all my Shazam thoughts will be there. I'll link it in the description box below. But really, Dr. Sivana, for quick thoughts, he's fun. I like Luke Strong, and maybe that's why I'm so biased to this character. It's not an amazing villain like a lot of these things. It's really over the top and stupid at a lot of points. Him chewing up the scenery with the cartoonist eye and design and look, but I do really enjoy the character and the aspect of him. So that's why I'm going to put him in the good camp. Next up, I have Steppenwolf. Yep, he's going in the category that was named for him. This is easily the worst DCU villain. So much. The CGI is awful. It's disgusting looking. The character is really bland and just gross to look at. In the film that's already super bad. With Justice League, I don't really like this character at all, and I find him just to be so bad. Next up, I have Amanda Waller. I'm going to put her in the meh category. She's not terrible. I think it would have been really interesting. And as a character, yeah, I think she's pretty fun and engaging. She's a pretty good protagonist. And I wish either she or the Joker was the main protagonist of Suicide Squad. But no, we had to have, Enchantress to be the main antagonist. That doesn't really work for me at a lot of points. Probably because this character, I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't see her more her and Bruce Wayne. I thought that'd be really interesting and just bringing the comic books to life. But overall, she's really cool. And next up, I have Dr. Poison. I'm again gonna put her in the meh category. There's a lot of DCEU characters who are in the meh. She's not terrible, kind of like Ludendorff. She's just kind of fine and just not really that interesting. And I just realized that Black Mask isn't on this list. He counts as a main villain, so I'm going to put him with the power of editing. I'm going to put him in the good. He's my favorite villain in the entire DCU. Ewan McGregor does a fantastic job playing him. He's uneasy and really unsettling a lot of points. The design is really fun. He's funny in a lot of moments. He just has really weird dialogue, and I find it just to be extremely funny in all the best ways. I think that he's definitely the best villain in the entire DCE universe. So that was my tier list ranking of all the DCEU villains that DCU doesn't run off the ton. What do you think of those? I'll tell all your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you guys like this video, you guys can hit that like button and subscribe and hit that post notification bell so you guys know when I upload another video. You guys can also check out my podcast I do every other Tuesday with a friend of mine. It's called the Movie View Podcast, and you guys can check out my Instagram at General_Daniel77. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. General out.